Thank you. When the Taxpayers Alliance asked me to come and speak and help launch this report, they were pretty sure they were going to get me to say yes. Firstly, of course, because the issue is massively important, and it's one we've all campaigned on for a long time. Secondly, because in my diary, it's marked with ABB alongside it. That stands for anything but Brexit. So it's guaranteed I'll turn up. And thirdly, of course, this is the only time, in all the time, and I've been associated with the Taxpayers Alliance since its inception. It was actually created by somebody who I was foolish enough to turn down for a job. The best mistake I ever made. And I've been alongside them throughout their entire life. And this is the first time I've seen a report from them where they are actually recommending that we spend money. So, now, it's also dangerous to come on third on these things. You know, when you're talking about the same subject, you invariably end up, this happened to me once before, I said to a young lady who was just about to escort me onto the stage after two previous speakers, I said, well, you know, everything's been said already. And she said, yes, Mr. Davis, but everything has not yet been said by everyone. So, that was my duty that day. So, you know, forgive me if I repeat one or two of the things that Craig and the Chairman have said. Firstly, of course, the TPA, Taxpayers Alliance, is committed not just to cutting taxes, but to improving the efficiency and effectiveness of public services, and that's very much what this is about. And stopping waste in the public sector. And I can think of no greater example in my entire time in Parliament of waste in the public sector than HS2. Now, that's why I'm delighted to help launch this compilation of 28 alternatives, all of which, every single one of which could be delivered with more certainty, more speed, and more effectiveness than HS2. Now, it's been apparent for years, ever since it was started under Blair by Mr. Adonis, who's continued to cover himself in glory. Ever since it was started under Blair, it was always a vanity project, the worst of things that governments come up with. And it's a real problem because big organisations of any sort find it very difficult to change their mind. They find it very difficult to reverse out of a mistake. As indeed this was, and no more so than governments. Governments have a way of getting stuck with bad ideas. Not normally the bad ideas of their predecessors, normally democracy sorts that out, but on this occasion, I'm afraid a Conservative or a coalition government ran with what was a terribly bad idea. I know this, I guess, better than most from my time as a chairman of the Public Accounts Committee. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with the Public Accounts Committee, I spent my 5 years as chairman, interrogating the people who really run the country. Yes, somebody does run the country, that really run the country, and that's the permanent secretaries. I mean, you've all seen Yes Minister, you all know who I mean by Sir Humphrey Appleby. And having interrogated Sir Humphrey Appleby twice a week for 5 years, there's one difference between you and me. You think Yes Minister's a comedy, and I know it's a training film. And no better demonstration than HS2. As you've heard, in 2010, it was put in as 32.7 billion. And then it's risen gradually to 56 billion. I think 3 or 4 increases so far. You've heard there's been an estimate of 100 billion. I think it's almost certain it will be more than 100 billion. I will be unsurprised, frankly, if it's 200 billion by the time it's completed, if we don't manage to get it cancelled this year, which of course is the target of this exercise. Now, 30 years ago, I wrote an article in Harvard Business Review about long-term projects and why they overrun. And that and my subsequent time in the Public Accounts Committee led me to write out Davis's rules of major projects. And basically, if the project is more than 5 years long, it will overrun. If it's subject to planning approval, it will overrun. If it's subject to legal challenge, it will overrun. If it uses new technology, it will overrun. If it's big, it will overrun. If it's run by the government, it will overrun. If it's distorted by the Treasury, it will overrun. And all of these factors, they don't add up, they multiply on each other. They multiply on each other. So what chance HS2, that is the only project I've ever seen that ticks every single one of those boxes, you know? So, You've heard already, I think Craig said, that the government has shifted the goalposts every time its rationale has been knocked down. Now, I remember when the main justification was speed. And in essence, to make that work in the cost-benefit analysis, they had to assume that time sitting on a train was of zero value. Well, I don't know about you. I suspect the other members of Parliament in the audience, if nobody else, will share this experience with me. And that is, time in the train is time when I spend reading up on my policy research, writing speeches and articles, catching up on emails, doing all the other things that I'm normally interrupted in doing in the office by telephones or people coming to see me. It's the most valuable time, not the least valuable time, which of course destroys the, even if the speed argument stood up, it will be destroyed by the assessment of the value of the time on the train. All I want out of a train is that it arrives when it says it's going to arrive and nothing else. You know, I don't really mind if it's an hour, 2 hours or 2.5 hours. Right? Now, the other thing, of course, is that by the time HS2 is completed, it will be completely obsolete technology. You've seen the Chinese super train at over 200 miles an hour. The Japanese this week unveiled the world's fastest train at 250 miles an hour. And that's without counting Elon Musk and Richard Branson, who are competing for the first Hyperloop at 700 miles an hour. I'm not sure that I even want to arrive in Birmingham at 700 miles an hour. Today, the government, of course, has now pivoted to focusing on congestion and connectivity. But that's where this report is so powerful, because in dealing with congestion and connectivity, every single project in the report does a better job than HS2 can ever hope to do. Now, we've all been in a busy train and struggled to find a seat. It is, incidentally, just as an aside on that, it's one of the upsides of the privatisation of the railways that is true today. Before the privatisation, that was not true. Railways were dying in this country. However, now they're very congested. The most congested line is the line from Glasgow, I think, to Manchester. HS2 will not help that at all, not at any stage, not if it's most successful as is being said by the government. Secondly, of course, the second most congested route is the Oxted line from East Grimsted to London Bridge. 191% capacity is the congestion on that line. Well, one of the projects in this report is aimed at, that's the Brighton Main Line project, is aimed at relaxing the pressure on a whole series of southern lines and improving the network capacity. And it will actually help, and it's not directly related, but it will actually help the second most congested line in the country. The other line, and I'm a Northern MP. I come from Yorkshire. I was born in Yorkshire and I represent a Yorkshire seat. And so I pay great attention when the government talks about rebalancing the north and the south. And they say HS2 is going to rebalance the north and the south. Well, I'm afraid I don't buy that. HS2 will backfire. The government's own analysis says that 40% of the benefits go to London. So while it's a very delicate number, 40%, it's clearly written not to be more than 50%. There's something about, writing the evidence to suit the theory. Some economists think it will actually suck economic benefit out of the provinces and drive it back to London. That, indeed, is my view. So each of the projects selected by the TPA stand on their own merits, and they come together to deliver huge benefits for entire regions without a risk of those benefits being siphoned off to London. Look at the examples. You've got electrifying the Chiltern Midland Main Line, reopening the Sutton Park Line would produce extra capacity in the Midlands. In my area of Yorkshire, we could have a rapid transit network in Leeds, combined with opening the Skipton to Colne line and the Beverley to York line. Again, actually enhancing the network for Yorkshire as a major part of enhancing the whole northeast, something which is much needed. And also, I noticed when I saw this Beverley to York line, which is would be very local to me, it'd be a few miles north of me where I live. I noticed that, and I went back and thought, well, let me test this, because it's always very interesting to read other people's projects, but to test it against local advice and local knowledge. And actually, back in 2011, it was in the local plan. the idea of, of preserving the land so the rail could run it. Unfortunately, there was no money available at that time. And of course, this is one of the problems of HS2. During austerity, it sucks up all of the potential capital available for all of the other projects. And so if we're not very careful, HS2, if it's allowed to go on for much longer, will, to coin a phrase, leave us standing at the station with respect to all the other projects that are possible or available to us. That's the moral of the story. That's the moral of the story. And of course, it's not just railways, as I think Craig said. The report includes great ideas to improve the roads. I think the northeast, the Durham to Edinburgh road will certainly get a massive cheer. And the imaginative ideas for cycle paths alongside the motorways and A roads. I can see when I retire, I've got plenty of exercise to get going around those. All of these will give a genuine boost to the whole economy, not just to one part of it, and without making the lives of thousands or tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of people miserable in the process with the blight that goes on. Now, this is actually a good time. I'm one of those who believe this is a good time to spend money on infrastructure. Interest rates have never been so low, and they're not likely to be ever so low again. So it's a good time to actually do that. The economy itself has got a strong growth outlook, and of course that will mean there will be bottlenecks in the economy, which is what we're talking about dealing with here. And of course, infrastructure investment in this country has been historically, in the last 20 years or so, poor and badly delivered. Those of you look around the room, and some of you were on the PAC with me, will know how badly delivered they were. I'm thinking of the NHS spine and a variety of other exciting projects that all got cancelled. So if we invest in all of these projects at 45 billion, we would have cash to spare still. Now, I know the Taxpayers Alliance would like to give it straight back to the taxpayer, and very good for them in that respect. But you can also look at things that were not in the 28. You could look at things like enhancing the fibre optic network, making it unnecessary for people to move around the country if they can do the work from home. So there's a whole series of other things, but of course, it's being the Taxpayers Alliance meeting, we must also give first priority to cutting the deficit and actually saving the taxpayers their own money, because we should never forget it's their money, not ours, that we're talking about spending. So with any massive project like HS2, we have to ask, is this worth it? And the answer is no. Will it improve capacity? No. Will it solve the North-South divide? No. Should we press ahead with it anyway? No. People like George Osborne and Amber Rudd have argued in the last week that new infrastructure is needed for the economy. They may well be right, but this is not it. Thank you very much indeed.